Someone said a sentence. That's it. A sentence, and your entire day changed color. It wasn't something big. It wasn't a tragedy, or a loss, or anything that would deserve, on its own, the weight you carried afterward. It was a sentence, a comment, a tone of voice that felt wrong, and suddenly, the rest of your day, which until then had been neutral, maybe even good, took on a different color, heavier, more closed off. You didn't choose this. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was automatic, as if something inside you had pressed a button without asking you. And the worst part wasn't the moment itself. The worst part came after. It was later, while washing the dishes, or driving in traffic, or trying to fall asleep, that the sentence came back. And it came back again, and again, each time with a new response. A better version of what you should have said. A sharper defense that will never be used, because the moment has already passed. But your mind doesn't know that. Your mind keeps rewriting the scene, as if rewriting it could change what already happened. And here's what nobody told you. That person, most likely, has already forgotten what they said. They went on with their day, had lunch, watched something, went to sleep peacefully. Meanwhile, you're still there, stuck in a scene that, for them, doesn't even exist anymore. This has a name, and that name isn't sensitivity. It isn't weakness, and it also isn't, as a lot of people try to convince you, just stress or exhaustion. It's something else, something older, more structural, that lives inside almost every human being, and that is rarely named with honesty, because the truth is uncomfortable. What hurt you wasn't the sentence, it was what you decided it meant. Sit with that idea for a second, not to agree, not to disagree, just to feel the weight of it. Because if it's true, it changes everything. If the problem isn't in the sentence, isn't in the person who said it, isn't in the tone, the context, their judgment of you, then where is it? And this is exactly where most people stop thinking, because thinking up to this point is safe. Thinking beyond it requires looking inward. And looking inward is the place most people avoid their whole lives. You've probably noticed this in yourself, in various ways, without ever stopping to examine it. The way criticism at work follows you for days, while a compliment passes by in seconds. The way a comment in a family group chat, sometimes not even directed at you, can sour an entire afternoon. The way a silence, a dry okay in a message, a strange look from someone you love, can make you mentally replay everything you said in the last few days, searching for the mistake. This isn't oversensitivity. It's a pattern, and patterns have an origin. The origin is something very simple, but that almost nobody stops to examine. You're constantly translating the world. Every word someone says, every gesture, every silence, passes through an internal translator before it reaches you as a feeling. And that translator isn't neutral. It has a history. It has old wounds. It has fears you didn't even know were still active. So when someone says something, anything, it isn't the sentence you feel. It's the translation. And the translation is almost never accurate. Before we continue, it's worth saying something. If what's being described here feels familiar, if you're listening to this and thinking that this is exactly what happens to you, maybe it's because this pattern is more present in your life than you realized until now. And as this channel exists precisely to keep aiming these things, we deserve. If that's the case for you, it's worth staying, because what comes next changes the way you'll understand everything you've felt up until now. Because there's a distinction that changes everything, and it isn't new. In fact, it's over 2,000 years old, only nobody ever taught you how to use it. There are, basically, two types of things in the world: the ones that depend on you, and the ones that don't. The sentence someone said doesn't depend on you. The tone of voice doesn't depend on you. The intention behind the comment, whether it was cruelty or carelessness or simply someone having a bad day, doesn't depend on you, and most of the time you'll never know which one it was. But the meaning you give to it, that yes, depends on you. And this is exactly where the problem lives, because most people spend their entire lives treating the two things as if they were the same, as if the sentence and the meaning were inseparable, as if feeling offended were an automatic, inevitable consequence of the sentence itself, and not something that happened afterward. inside you, in a space you didn't even know existed. That space between what happened and what you felt. That space has a name, even though almost nobody notices it. That's where the pain is born, not in the event, in the space. And the most unsettling part is that this space is so fast, so automatic, that it seems not to exist. It feels like the sentence is the pain, directly, with nothing in between. But it isn't. There's an interval, even if it lasts a fraction of a second, where you decide what that means. And that decision is so quick, so well trained, that it feels like a reflex. But reflexes can be retrained. This is something almost nobody learns, because nobody teaches it at school, at home, anywhere. You learn to react, but you never learn that the reaction isn't mandatory. Almost 2,000 years ago, a man who was born a slave, whose body bore the marks of a cruel master's violence, arrived at this same conclusion, not as theory, but as survival. He understood that there were things that could take everything from him, his freedom, his body, even his life. But there was one thing they could never touch, what he decided things meant. Epictetus wrote, more or less, that it isn't the things themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. Sit with that sentence, not to admire it, to feel its weight. Because if that's true, and Epictetus's entire life was proof that it was, then that sentence that ruined your day, that comment you replayed 100 times in your head, that silence you interpreted as rejection, none of it ever had the power to hurt you on its own. The power was, always has been, in the interpretation. And here's the hardest part to accept. This doesn't mean the other person was right, or that you should just let it go, or that your pain isn't real. The pain is real, completely real, but its origin isn't where you thought it was. Let's look at how this shows up, really, in everyday life, because it's easy to talk about this in theory, and completely different to recognize it in the moment it's happening. Imagine a family dinner. Everyone gathered together. Achi somi someone, maybe your mother, an aunt, a sibling, makes a comment. You've put on a little weight, haven't you? Or still haven't figured out what you're doing with your life. Or simply a silence when you share something you're proud of, followed by a quick change of subject. The sentence itself, or the silence itself, lasts seconds, but what comes after can last the rest of the day. You go quiet. You smile less. When someone asks if you're okay, you say yes. But inside you're replaying the scene, trying to understand what that meant, what it says about you, whether people really think that about you. And here's what happened, without you realizing it. The sentence lasted a second. The meaning you built around it lasted hours. And it was the meaning, not the sentence, that ruined your evening. There's probably a scene similar to this one playing in your head right now, not because I said family dinner, but because you already have one stored away, a specific person, a specific place, a sentence that, even years later, is still there, intact, as if it had been said yesterday. If that's the case, write it in the comments, just the scene, nothing else needed, who it was, where it happened, what that person said. No conclusion needed. No explanation needed. Just the scene, the way it still lives inside you. Now think about work. You send a message to a coworker or your boss. The reply comes back short. Okay, no exclamation point, no emoji, nothing beyond those 2 letters. And your mind instantly, without asking permission, starts working. Did I upset them? Did I do something wrong? Did they not like my idea? You spend the afternoon a little tense, going over what you wrote, looking for where the mistake was. And maybe, probably, there was no mistake at all. Maybe that person was just busy. Maybe they write okay to everything, always, and it never meant anything more than received. But you don't know that, and in the absence of information, your mind fills the gap, and it almost always fills it with the worst possible version. This is the pattern. It repeats in relationships, in friendships, in text messages, in meetings, in glances. Someone makes a strange face while you're talking, and you're already, internally, judging yourself. Did I say something stupid? Does this person not like me? Am I too weird? And look at the speed of that. In less than a second, you went from someone made a face to I'm too weird. A massive conclusion built on almost nothing. Now, a question, and this might be the most important question in this video. How many times in your life have you had an extremely strong reaction to an extremely small event? We're not talking about big things, real losses, real betrayals, pain that deserves to be felt with all the intensity it asks for. We're talking about small things, a comment, a tone, a delayed reply, an okay with no emoji. If the answer is many times, and for most people it is, then that reveals something. Not that you're weak or too sensitive. It reveals that there's an overactive translator inside you, a system that trained over years, maybe decades, of past experiences, has learned to read threat where there might be none. And that translator didn't come from nowhere. It was shaped by a childhood where approval might have been conditional, by relationships where criticism came with emotional punishment, by environments where being okay depended on reading other people's moods before they said anything at all. If you grew up or lived at some point in your adult life in an environment where someone's mood could change everything, where you had to read the room before relaxing, where one wrong word could mean hours of tension, then your translator learned to operate in a permanent state of alert, and it keeps operating that way, even decades later, even in completely different situations, even with people who would never harm you. This explains why a short okay from a coworker, someone you've known for 6 months, who has never shown any hostility, can trigger the same sensation in your body that it did when you were a child and sensed that something was wrong at home. The body doesn't know these are different situations. To the body, it's the same sensation, and the same sensation triggers the same response. Now, and this is essential, understanding this isn't the same as solving it, but it's the first step, and maybe the most important one, because most people live their entire lives without ever getting here. They live reacting, suffering, wearing themselves down, without ever realizing there's a pattern, that the pattern has an origin, and that the origin can be examined. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, who wrote to himself, not to publish, not to impress anyone, just to remind himself of what he needed to remember, wrote something that seems to have been written for this exact moment. He said, in one of his simplest and most devastating notes, that if you are distressed by anything external, it isn't the thing itself that disturbs you, but your judgment about it, and it's within your power to wipe out that judgment right now. Right now, someday, not after a lot of therapy, although therapy does help, and that's worth saying, but right now, in the sense that the space between the event and the judgment, the space we talked about before, is always available in every moment. Only most people were never taught to look at it. And here's something you might have already felt in a different way, in another context. When someone constantly tries to control how others will react, anticipating moods, adjusting their behavior to avoid conflict, that person is also, without realizing it, handing others control over their own well-being. If you've watched this channel's video about expectations, about how expecting others to behave a certain way is one of the greatest sources of suffering there is, you'll recognize this same mechanism here, just from a different angle, because taking things personally and living trapped by expectations of others are, in fact, two sides of the same coin. Both put your peace in the hands of something you don't control. Back to the point, what does it actually mean, in practice, to wipe out a judgment? It doesn't mean pretending you felt nothing. It doesn't mean repressing, swallowing it down, acting like everything's fine when it isn't. That would just be trading one form of suffering for another, trading the pain for the denial of the pain, which is usually worse. What it means is something else, more subtle, and over time, far more powerful. It means consciously creating that space between the event and the reaction. It means the moment the sentence arrives, instead of letting the automatic translator take over immediately, asking a simple question, a single question that changes everything. The question is, what do I actually know about what this person meant? Not what you feel they meant, what you know. And most of the time, the honest answer is nothing. You don't know. You're assuming, and the assumption almost always comes loaded with your own history, not the other person's. This doesn't mean you should doubt everything you feel, or treat every hurt as if it were just interpretation. There are situations where the intention is clear, where the cruelty is real, where the pain is legitimate and doesn't need any reinterpretation. But those situations are far rarer than how often we feel hurt. Most everyday pain, the kind that follows you for hours after a small comment, doesn't come from real cruelty. It comes from ambiguity, and ambiguity, when it meets a translator trained to expect the worst, always loses to fear. Think now about one last situation, maybe the most common one of all. You're in a relationship, romantic, a friendship, a family one, and the other person is quieter than usual. They haven't said anything wrong. They're just quieter, and your mind fills the silence. Did I do something? Are they upset with me? Is this the beginning of them pulling away? You spend hours, maybe days, monitoring this person's behavior, looking for signs, adjusting your own behavior to make up for something that might not even exist. And when, finally, you find out the reason, they were tired or worried about something else, something that had absolutely nothing to do with you, you feel a mix of relief and exhaustion. Relief, because the fear didn't come true. Exhaustion, because you spent an enormous amount of emotional energy on something that, in the end, wasn't about you. How many times has this scene already repeated itself in your life? How many hours, days, maybe entire weeks have you spent like this, monitoring, assuming, suffering in anticipation for something that, in the end, wasn't even real? That's the question that remains, not to make you feel guilty about it. Guilt doesn't help here at all. And honestly, it's just another form of the same pattern turned inward. The question remains so that, from now on, you start to notice, just notice, because noticing is where everything begins. You can't change a pattern you don't see. And from the moment you start to see, start to catch the exact moment the translator kicks in, the moment a neutral sentence turns inside you into a threat, something changes. Not immediately, not dramatically, but it changes. And maybe this is the true meaning of not taking things personally. It isn't indifference. It isn't coldness. It isn't ceasing to care about people or what they say. It's actually the opposite. It's caring enough about yourself to not hand over your day, your peace, your next few hours, to a sentence that probably wasn't given the care you're giving it. It's giving back to the right place. What should never have left it? The control over what things mean to you. And if this video made sense to you, it's likely that other things said on this channel will too, because the patterns we carry rarely show up in just one part of life. They show up at work, in relationships, in the silence before sleep, in the way we react to the people we love. These things, keep naming these things, too close. It's worth remembering one last thing, something Seneca wrote in a letter, almost 2,000 years ago, to a friend who was living through exactly this kind of torment, replaying conversations, anticipating judgments, suffering over things that hadn't even happened yet. He wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. There's nothing to explain about that sentence. It already knows what it needs to say.